Hello world. Patricia O'Connor and Frida Reba Dorsey. Look at that sky. Frida Reba Dorsey here, coming up to her mark. There you go, fluffy ears. It is. So that's Frida Reba Dorsey. I am Patricia O'Connor. We are the Bonsai Balcony. Here is our balcony full of bonsai trees. Thus the name. Today it is another rock solid day in Alameda, California. Our temperatures are hanging out in the high 60s. In the high 60s, you can't even pull off a 70-degree day right now. What we're looking at is my Taxodium ditchum, bald cypress, swamp cypress. It is a grouping. So last week we did a little, guess what? We've been doing this 5-year show. Actually, it wasn't last week. I think it was Wednesday. We did our guess what? It's been 5-year show, which means these guys are at least 4 years old because we were doing this early on, just kind of like, what are my limitations? What are my limitations as somebody with a south-facing balcony? And so far what we figured out is the king of bonsai, which is what I was told is Japanese black pine, is not our limitations. We can definitely do those. We can definitely do big trees. We can definitely do little trees. And we have been. And so our first experiment with size was to measure the front door and then order a bonsai pot accordingly. And these have been a lot of fun to grow. Last weekend was the Bonsai Expo, for which yours truly did a 14-minute. Frida and I did a 14-minute spot on Bald Cypress, and that was my honor to be sandwiched in with all of those, with Dave and all of those other absolutely terrific bonsai professionals, and that was quite the experience. But it was also about time for us to do a little Bald Cypress show and just pass along a few tips. These trees are fairly easy to grow. Where I am is in San Francisco area, the Bay Area of California, next to right close to Oakland, California. Just that way, a few miles. I'm on the bay, and across the bay is San Francisco. So I go out to the beach and then watch the fireworks display in San Francisco, for instance. But anyway. It's cool here. It's a very temperate climate. We could probably get away with a little warmer temperature. Most of the people who do bonsai and or experts, or my teachers, who I would consider teachers on these, are people who are scattered around the United States Gulf Coast. Growing up, or not growing up, but when I started growing these, I started trying to boost my information and my tips and other things, and I learned from Bill's Bayou, which is a bonsai grower out of New Orleans, and I learned from and I watched a lot of videos from John Gene Angel in the Carolinas. He does some beautiful flat. He's known more, I think, for his flat top bald cypress. He also does lessons. He also sells trees, and I think he is just a wealth of information when it comes to that. I would probably recommend. And then Weigert's. Weigert's is an excellent source for material when it comes to bonsai pots. I got my bonsai training pot from Weigert's, and they're in Florida. So all of those places, all of those people have the thing in common that they live at or on or close to the Gulf of Mexico, so that's going to be high temps, a lot of water, a lot of rain, and there's nothing about that a bald cypress doesn't just love. At 4 or 5 years, these things have been absolutely a pleasure to grow. They grow fast. The three of those aren't particularly ancient trees. I think the center one is right at 20, and I think the ones on either side are probably knocking at half that. So they're at or around. And I know closer to what the one in the center is because I'm the one who did the chop in the center, and I counted the ring at 16 4 years ago. So that's why last year I started seeing cypress balls, and this year I also see cypress balls. Some people like to defoliate their bald cypress in summer and get a second flush out of them. I did that the first year, and then I started watching and listening to somebody, and and on a lot of things I follow their teachings, mostly for pines and stuff. But what they taught me about bald cypress is that, well, I'll just say, Bonsai Mirai, when I'm watching their lessons, they were talking about how many beautiful old cypress trees they've seen in the United States over the years. Like, if you just type in, they were saying things like years ago when they would start doing their internet searches and stuff, they would see tons of just beautiful, beautiful cypresses, and they would see all of these tricks and trades that the tips that people were passing around. And as they got pointed out, where are those trees today? They've seemed to have disappeared. So the finger was pointed at the practice of possibly leaving them in water year round, and the constant defoliation. So in along to that extent, when I first got into this, I was watching videos where people would, the 4th of July, they would have defoliation parties. And they're really easy to defoliate. You just kind of grab them by the base and go zoop, and you've just completely defoliated a limb. So I've kind of shied away from that because as it was put to me, where are all those old trees? We should have, people have been bonsaiing bald cypress for a long time, and they've been in the United States. They've been doing it for quite a few years. We're not running out of material. Where are all those great old trees? So to that end, I think, and I preach that if bonsai would be tricky for you, if you sometimes have to, leave home for a week or two to go take care of business or do whatever because you've got life on the road, then maybe a bald cypress is that avenue because you could put it in water. Having said that, I still see it as a spring and summer thing and not just leave your tree in water all of its life. Even bald cypress trees that do that, I assume that because they're not in bonsai pots, that because they're in the wild, their roots probably go down in the earth far enough to where they're not constantly totally in the water always forever, that they're finding dry dirt down there below the water line. So that's my assumption. And otherwise, I think a lot of times these guys tend to thrive on that end of a pasture that gets wet for a couple of months of the year. If you've got something near where water drainage flows, during the late winter, early spring or something, that would be a great place for a bald cypress to plant a bald cypress. You can get some phenomenal growth out of one of these guys in just a short number of years. And they have a lot in common. These guys lose their foliage every year. That's why we call them, they can also be red cypress because of the color of the foliage, but they refer to them as bald cypress because of the fact that they lose their foliage. It turns a really bright, rusty red color, and I think it's a beautiful color, but then it comes off really easy. That's when I defoliate. When it turns that color, you can basically just do that to it and it'll go pink and fall. And sometimes we'll get a cool snap here to where you look at your trees and it's getting close to fall and stuff, and everything will still be green, and one day you'll look up and everything is red. It's just this beautiful, beautiful red color. And then within a couple of days, the wind and stuff starts taking that off, and it starts looking and it starts looking shoddy. It's at that point when fronds are everywhere, all over, that I can go through and defoliate these guys. And then that's the time when I like to decide what we're going to carry over into the following spring. So if I have bar branches, it's a good time to decide which one of those two we're going to get rid of and get rid of one of them. If there's some other little, like we'll just do our this one, our little every other branch thing, and we'll make our decisions on that based on the way everything looks with the foliage gone. When I've got just a ton of branches on one side, that'll be the time to clear that up. I'm just going to say it. I've made a design choice or a design change this year. We've spent a couple of years building ramification on branches, and I saved this one. This is a good example of some pretty nice looking ramification. I think this technique will work really well on this tree, but I decided against it on my bald cypress tree. So I've gone through and started cutting off some of these things that I had, frankly, a couple of years invested in lieu of what a bald cypress tends to naturally do. This is also what I've noticed, that on the property here, we have quite a few California coastal redwoods, and they do the same thing. If I'm standing underneath one, like down here looking straight up, I see an awful lot of, all the way up, I see just a prolific amount of young branches less than 5 or 6 years old, just going from the bottom of the tree up to the top. And that's how they make their silhouette. That's how they make their canopy. And, I'm kind of thinking about it. There's all kind of things that influence us as to what we like and what we don't like when it comes to bonsai. This year, I have probably cut off more of these trees than I preach we should be cutting off of these. Oh, by the way, this is an experiment. These branches have been kicking up on the end, so I ran these pieces of bamboo on them and then tied them down with aluminum wire that I have left over. It's like a splint, right? So I splinted up these two limbs that were kicking up on the end, and it's probably just an exercise in boredom as much as anything else. But anyway, that's what that is. And then I've got bamboo stakes. I do this every couple of years when I get tired of cutting off the tops and then retraining tops and then having them. This is just a way to give everybody a little bit of, I can straighten everybody out a lot easier this way. I can do that too, right there, right? Boom. So that's why I do that. It's less likely to leave wire scars, and I'm able to get everybody going in the same direction with those splints that I do with bamboo. So back to our bald cypress trees. These guys lend themselves to all different types of bonsai styles. You can. I'm going to grow these three are going to grow up and be formal uprights. That's basically what I'm going to do with them. The three of them are going to make that traditional bonsai diamond shape, and I suspect they'll be beautiful. They could be growing a little bit faster, and that is mainly because it's a little temperate here. Like I started off saying, we barely, high 60s. I don't know that we're even going to get up to 70 degrees. This year in particular, I've been saying the words unseasonably cool an awful lot, while parts of the United States are just absolutely going through some horridly high temperatures. I have been saying the words unseasonably cool quite a bit this year, and that kind of shows up. I don't think my maples are particularly cool with really cool temperatures. I think my bald cypresses they're growing fast, but they would grow even faster if it were hotter. And by fast, I mean I'm starting to see a lot of splitting of bark here. These guys are starting to heft up and are just starting to split out of this bark. Good to see. I love that. I love that. Um, the difference being, other people look at trees. You look at trees and you equate age to how the ramified branches look over time. I equate age on a bald cypress, having been raised around them, with the look of the trunk. And even then, if it's a healthy tree, I expect the trunk to look all alligator bark like that and look really cool. But at the same time, I expect to see that if it's a healthy tree, there's going to be a prolific amount of vigorous, green, lush shoots. And that's the same thing if it's a Taxodium ditchum or if it's a coastal redwood. I don't know the Latin name for a coastal redwood. That's both the look. What you tend not to see is a lot of ramified branches. You tend not to see a lot of heavily barked over branches that have been standing the test of time. And, this is what denotes our age. And that's kind of why I moved away from our ramified branches here. By the time this guy gets another 2 years older, the base of it will be as fat as the trunk. It'll have the same kind of barking characteristics all the way down it as the trunk. And the more that gets like moss on it or mold on it or something, the more things that it would do that on other trees would denote age with me personally. And I'm not telling you that this is how you should think. The more that just denotes ill health, like because it's a bald cypress and I'm used to seeing these things growing branches like that, even if they're extremely tall and extremely old. I'm not used to looking up and seeing woody branches with a lot of heavily bark. I was looking at videos of other people's trees, and they've done the branches exactly like we're taught to do them in bonsai, and I'm like, meh. And that's kind of when I started. That's kind of when I started. I was going, yeah, the finished product I don't think translates to me as well on a bald cypress as it does to other trees. Those things that I was just saying that I'm not wild about on my Taxodium ditchum are exactly the same things that I would be wild about on my oak, on my pines. Show me all that bark. Show me all that, crusty stuff or fungi or lichens or whatever. And whenever I see that on a bald cypress limbs and stuff, and they're heavy and they've had limbs for a long time, I'm going, that would denote a tree that's not putting out new growth for some reason. What's wrong with? Except I wouldn't think of it that way. I would just get a funny feeling about the tree, and that's kind of why. And that's kind of what I've dissected about how I feel about my design aesthetics when it comes to a bald cypress. I fully expect that my experiences growing up have probably altered my view from what most people think that they're shooting for aesthetically. So maybe I'll come around. But yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts there. These guys are extremely easy to grow. They're pretty easy to ramify. You will always have a whole lot of choices to every year when it starts budding out. It will just bud out everywhere. The trees will just start off with goosebumps all over them, and every single one of those goosebumps, as I call them, is a bud site. Every single one of them. Every bud site is a leaf. Every leaf is a potential branch. So a happy bald cypress that hasn't been over chopped or had its energy robbed out should always give the grower plenty of choices for which to build the structure of a tree. And I kind of suspect by the things that I was just saying there that when we go pulling up to finish taper on these trunks will be when we're pretty close to being finished. And then we'll grow our branches out more selectively and get the final finish that we want. and then we'll try to hold back on our fertilizing and maintain that for 4 or 5 years. But meanwhile, somewhere towards the end of that, I'm going to start letting a few little smaller branches escape the fall pruning, because it'll be time to replace some of those other branches on the by and by as that happens. And I kind of see that as something that probably has to happen on a Taxodium ditchum, on an American Bald Cypress. And I think probably to the same extent to my Dawn Redwood, probably a lot of those same techniques probably are would hold true on that too. So pretty easy to grow. Basically water them every single day. They need water every single day. If we're going to disappear somewhere for a week or so, don't trust somebody to water your tree every day. You'll lose it and lose a friend. So instead of going through that, put it in a pan of water or something, or use a drip system, or, and they're pretty easy to wire. They're pretty easy to ramify. Wire scars will get in them very, very quick. A lot of times the branches want to pull up. I like to cheat and pull them down. I can do that with guy wires. I can also do that with aluminum wire, but you can't leave it on there very long. It will make scars really, really quickly. And so yeah, Taxodium ditchum, very, very pleasing trees to grow. This is what our rollover looks like from that we did last summer. Maybe time to go through there. When you start seeing the rollover seems to slow down, it's a good time to go back through and cut the inside edge, green that up, Like I'll take my little grinder or something, or my Dremel tool, and I thought about this. What if I took a piece of sandpaper and just roughed up this inside edge? Because what we want to do is we want to tear up that bark on that inside edge and let it heal over, because as it heals over, that continues our march. That speeds up our rollover. And that's what we're doing here. We're turning this until it gets fat enough to be that. And we're doing that until it gets fat enough to be that. And this guy's only 2 years old. Yeah. And all of this was stuff that we cut off after the old leader was out here. And I didn't like the old leader being out here. So when it grew a shoot, basically on its inside, like say, when a shoot came up there, except it would have been over here. When this came up on the inside, I said, if that shoot survives and gets a couple of inches tall, we're going to start chopping back the leader that was out here and over here. And I did. I started chopping it back, and then this one replaced it. And we've almost got all of our rollover. Yeah, what chop. What chop there indeed. That was, like that didn't even happen. Now, here's the thing. When I got this tree, there were pictures of this tree and other trees that he had for sale. I bought this tree from a local shopper's guide about bonsai. And one picture of some other trees that the vendor had for sale, that the bonsai artist had for sale. I think linked over to his, what was it? It wasn't Facebook page, but there were pictures of this tree before I got it, when it had a chop. It had a flat chop right across here, and it had two shoots sticking out, way out like that, and a flat chop right there. Well, there was a picture of it on his, who was that? Anyway, never mind. It was his, like his Facebook page, but it wasn't Facebook. Anyway, there were pictures of this tree before he had done this chop, and the trunk then was, as I recall from the picture, about 6 inches taller. So had I bought it before that chop would have happened, that would have meant that the top of the trunk would have been up here, And for instance, had I just otherwise made the same decisions I made, these guys would be 6 inches shorter. Everything they do, they would have to do within this shorter span. Okay, fine. No big change there, except this. 6 inch, you can see the way our trunk is fluted. It's making a graceful, beautiful line, and 6 inches up, it was probably about that wide, not this wide. So there's a year or more to grow in that much more girth for these two guys to do. If I were going to, if I got one of these and it were, a young harvested tree, I would I would put serious thought into what my finished height is, and then I would think seriously about how long it's going to take me to grow pieces of wood that big. I kind of, I don't know whether I shortened the length of time or I added to it by making this a twin trunk. But in theory, to me, that's two trunks are going to have to do half as much, and they're both putting out a prolific amount of limbs, and they're both putting out a prolific amount of fronds, and all kind of photosynthesis going on there, and we're feeding and watering the guy. So go babies, go babies, go. But even then, we added time, or it was more time was added to the tree the farther down you chop it. If the tree would have been chopped down this low to start it off in a bonsai pot, and you had it, then you would have that many more years, because you would have to grow that much wood out of your leader to make that happen. And this one has grown incredibly fast, but that's 2 years. Let me see if that's 2 years. Now let's put that in. You see the wedge on either side, that is the base. We have to get that 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It's got to suck up this much spot. We're here now, and it's got to suck up that much. That's your time. So that's your time in creating a beautiful bald cypress. Now, also think about the shape. So my recommendation would be, when you get a bald cypress, a Taxodium ditchum, my recommendation would be, do your chop for taper early. This is what's going to take the longest. This rollover is going to be the longest part of having a finished bonsai. If you are going a year or 2 or 3 of growing branches down here and growing all of this stuff, or maybe taking one of these and pointing it up, but you've still got you haven't started the clock yet on what's going to be the longest part of this process. These are okay. This chop goes from here to here, so that much. It could have also gone from here to, say, down here, and that would have been more elegant, and it might not have taken any more time, because it's got more of the tree is working for you to close up. It's like pulling up a zipper, except it's an organic zipper that's got to grow itself shut. So we can either grow this much shut, but this is a pretty abrupt, that's almost like pencil shaped, right? Those cuts could have been longer, and it might have been more fluted, but I think that's the minimum, and I think we're going to be okay with that. Later on this summer, I should probably break out the grinders and do some more death-defying woodwork. I want to take out this knot here. There you go. If you're going to steal the car, drive it away, please. We can take out this knot here, take out this bulge here, and this would also be a good time, like I said, to rough up the inside leading edge on this rollover so that it'll speed up. In years past, whenever these trees slow down their growth in the summer, I have clipped the tops and then decided to pick another branch and make that. And that release of auxin and that new branch becoming a new leader wakes everybody up and they really get going. Because this year I started cutting back some of those branches that I had ramified earlier. I kind of cut back a little bit more than what I would tell you to cut back. Yeah, it bothers me that I did that. I don't think the trees look sparse, but I am going, we don't want to take energy away from the trees. If you've got a whole bunch of branches just like this, too thick, one right over the other, 3 or 4 deep, then they're all kind of screwing one another out of light. Take away a couple of those and then you can also watch more branches grow because they're not all getting robbed. So that's kind of what I was doing there, but I also jumped at the chance every time I did any little bit of pruning to knock out some of these ramified guys. And so I don't really expect between being July, I don't really expect from now to the rest of summer for it to replace all of that. But it would be nice. It would be nice to see some more branches come out on this side and that side. This is probably what we're going to take with us. This is probably what we're going to take with us till fall. And we did okay. Yeah, we did okay. I want to tie that. I want that third tree over there. Let's see. Focus. That third tree over there. I want to tie that top, that branch that's kind of going at like a 47-degree angle. That's kind of descriptive, but I want to tie that top that's going off like one of these angles. I want to tie that off to a piece of bamboo and get that going on the, getting that going a little straighter and a little bit more upright. The rest of them look pretty good. As you can see, those pieces of bamboo, I haven't tied them tight against the trunks necessarily. They don't have to be. They're just helping me. They're just tied up. They're tied up and they're not really forcing anything or bending anything. But then when this top over here wanted to go a little this way, I was able to pull it back. And you can see it's still got it's not like I tied it up tight to it. I just pulled it over and that's all it's supposed to do. This guy was more out here and I pulled it over. So that's kind of what we're doing. And when it comes to that, I want to take this guy and do that right there. I can't do it with one hand. But basically what Long Arms O'Connor will do is I'll take that cinder block, sit it right there, stand on it, and then tie up that top. Yeah, I got really long arms. We think Uncle Bobo may have been an orangutan. We're not really sure. Anyway, this is our little spill on our Taxodium ditchum, our bald cypress. And my bald cypress, I don't think we'll ever have to worry about being bald. I typically come out here and find Patricia here hanging from them. So I've, got bald cypress toupees for days for these guys, if need be. Anyway, like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Tomorrow's drop, we're going to talk about watering. It's been a weird time to water. It's been a weird time to try to stay on top of watering our trees. You can see me applying some cut paste to one of our chops. I don't worry too much about the cut paste on my cuts or chops because these trees do not bleed that much. I'm more putting cut paste on things to make sure that the bark doesn't peel off and start doing something in the way of a scar. That's where I saw something separating in the way of a scar, and what happens if I do it and I peeled on it and I made that tear. And that's been a couple of years ago. So yeah, I wouldn't have cared if I'd have bought the tree and it had that, but I did that, and I was like, well, damn. So yeah, ever since then, whenever I do chops or woodworks, I make sure that these edges, I kind of try to make sure our edges, you can kind of see right here, you can kind of see the bark is separating from the tree here. That's where this bark is getting ready to go. It's splitting and getting ready to, but don't force it. Don't start, don't get your fingernail and start picking at it. Yeah, don't. Anyway, like and subscribe if you guys have not already. Our next spot will be tomorrow. I appreciate you. Frida Reba Darcy appreciates you. And thank you all. Thank you all so much for watching.